Well, hello everyone. We have a small little group today, but um, I think that'll be great for discussion. But my name's Katie. Um, I was obviously the host of our first big group meeting, and today is our first small group meeting for this group. We've already had four small group meetings over the last 2 days, another one tonight, and then one more tomorrow. So this is just a quick kind of agenda. I'm just going to go over a couple housekeeping items to start off with, and then we'll jump right into the discussion and go from there. So I do have a fun PowerPoint because what's a Zoom without a PowerPoint, right? So just as a reminder, we have 7 small groups. So right now we're discussing programs and curriculum, and one of the reasons why you were assigned to this group was you mentioned something that had programs or curriculum related things in your comments, or you might have not made any comments, and then I randomly assigned you. So I just want to go over a little bit about the shared drive. In the email I sent you, there is a link to a shared folder. It's just a Google folder, and I'll bring up this group's one right now. So group E, one of the things I'll be doing, and I'm just double checking with everyone as part of the group, that if you are okay with sharing your name and email address with everyone in the small group, that way people can communicate with each other. If someone says something really interesting, you can email them. So unless you have any objections, what I will be doing is putting just your name and email in that spreadsheet. And then I think the most important one is the resources link. So this is and you can also save like Word files in there, or documents, PDFs, whatever. You can put it in the folder, but this is just a little tracker. So if it's something you found online, you can put the link in there. I did just a quick kind of name of what the resource is, and then I put it that it was added by me. So I put some stuff in here that's shared with everyone, that's like 1 through 8. Some of the things I added for this group in particular is some information on our gifted and talented program, Indian education, because that falls under curriculum. CTE is also something I think we should discuss as part of this group. So career and technical education. So I put something about Perkins grants, which is a federal grant program. And then I put some more advanced opportunities grants, which are also CTE related, and some more state finance related things. But please continue to check this out. I threw a couple of these links in there earlier today. Please don't hesitate to throw your own information in here. The more information, the better. It can always spur an interesting idea. A lot of this stuff is OPI resources, but there's a lot of great just studies out there in general. And then before we move on to our discussion, a quick reminder that the next meeting will be June 26th at 5:30 p.m. So now I'm going to stop the screen sharing so we can discuss more directly with each other. And the first thing I would like to do is if everyone could go around and just do one quick sentence, who you are, and maybe why you're interested in being a part of the working group, or something that you really care about as part of this. So my name is Katie Bloodgood. I'm the legislative liaison. So I'm not a budget expert, but I am an expert in dealing with legislative bodies. Maybe Lillian, would you like to just quickly just say hello and introduce yourself? I'm only singling you out because you're at the top of my screen. You gotta unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Lillian Pa, and currently I'm in Kalispell Peterson Elementary School. I want to learn more about the curriculum and program planning in the district, so I decided to join and learn more about it.
Great.
That's all.
Oh, no, that was perfect. We'll get into discussion of more things. So I just wanted everyone to have time to say hi. So, Christina, would you like to say hi? Although we're getting to know each other pretty well. I mean, this is the 3rd hour I've spent with you in like 24 hours. So by the end of this, we're gonna be friends.
Your luck is buy a lottery ticket because getting to spend time with me. Just a quick thing I wanted to tell you, Katie, is that the link that was actually on the email didn't take you to Zoom. It said it was a page that wasn't found. So I actually had to go into the agenda and find it, just thinking that maybe that might be why we're, short on people today.
Oh, did you not get I sent out another email with the correct link. Did you not get the second
I
email? I
got
did.
the two for the other two, but not for this one.
Okay. Maybe I just left you off the list on this one. Because I did have a problem when I copied and pasted, I put two things together. So actually the
I
correct
saw that.
link was in the wrong link, but I just copied two things and pasted in. So I apologize, and I appreciate everyone being patient with copy and paste mistakes.
Forgivable, you're a human being. So I'm Christina Dirksen. I am a part of two other groups. As I've said in the other groups, so I am not a teacher, I'm not an administrator, but I do have three children who are younger and in Montana going to school. I have them going to private school because my oldest kindergarten year was such an absolutely dreadful experience. And so we decided to put them in private school, but I still want to help or hopefully come up with ideas or be able to think outside of the box ideas to help with the public schooling system, because I would still like for them to possibly go to the public school system some point in time in the future. But as of right now, as things stand, that's not going to happen.
You're
Are
muted
you on
there.
mute?
Yes, I'm on mute. I was trying to cut back.
Okay.
It's still an active office behind me, so I was trying to cut back down on some noise. But yes, go ahead. You're about to.
I'll go ahead and go next. I'm an education specialist in Polson and been doing that for 28 years. My purpose or reason for joining is basically gifted education in our Constitution, our state law, and our accreditation standards. It's a mandate that we provide services for these students who are far ahead of the game, and yet it's a mostly unfunded mandate. There's extremely little funding given to this, and therefore it's not happening in most schools, and at risk of not happening in the few that do have stuff going on. So that's my concern that brings me to the table.
Thanks. And Sheila, would you like to say hi?
Sure. I think I have, there we go. I'm cooking dinner while I do this. My name is Sheila Murphy, and I live in Missoula and have grandchildren in the public school system, but our whole family is products of the public school system. My husband, my children, my grandchildren. I'm very invested. I was a member of the founding committee for Graduation Matters and 21st Century Schools, and the success of Missoula public schools and state public schools are both very important to me.
Thank you, Sheila. And then Amber, Rachel, would you like to say hi?
Hi, everybody. I can say hi. My name is Rachel Wonderscheid. I am the director of the Montana After School Alliance. We're a statewide intermediary organization that works with the programs across our communities that do youth programming for kids who are school-aged, but outside of the school day or the school year. So that looks a little bit like our Boys and Girls Clubs and our YMCAs and our summer camps and our parks and recs and our libraries and our museums. And I am here because a lot of these programs are augmenting our school system. They're also incredibly important for our families, especially those who have two working parents. They're a really important way for kids to kind of get tutoring and mentoring and safe space, and good positive relationships as they grow older. They've been very important for kind of COVID recovery, and yet the state of Montana doesn't fund them at all. We have a few federal programs that are passed through the Office of Public Instruction that go to some of these programs, but not all of these programs. And so I am here representing that voice and trying to advocate for some more awareness about how important these programs really are to our kids and families, and in supporting our schools. That's why I'm here. And I'm also trying to get some food in before I go, so I might be off camera a little bit as well.
Totally understandable. I appreciate everyone. I know everyone's taking time out of their personal lives, and I appreciate everyone making time for that and doing the best they can. So, Amber?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry to jump on late. I'm Amber Eubanks, and I am a parent of, I've got an adult daughter, and then I've got two daughters that are 8th grade and 10th grade at Corvallis School District. And I am here because I have a huge vested interest in education and where education's going, especially now having kids in different decades. And seeing the changes over the last 20 years. And I'm also working with Corvallis Schools on some grant writing and funding. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of get my foot in the door and get to know people. We're newer to Montana. We've been here about 5 years. And so just wanted to kind of get a little bit more plugged in, and also feel like all of us have important things to share and strong voices. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks again, everyone, for being patient. This is the first time OPI has done a type of working group like this. And as far as I'm aware, in Montana, nothing like this has been done before, to try to get as many community members together to discuss it. And our biggest thing, and I want to reiterate, is like being creative. And I think that's what's going to be really great about these groups and just talking to each other, is that I think sometimes anyone, and especially legislators, can get very set in their ways. They look at the formula. This is the way it's done. This is the way it always has been done. This is the way it will be done. And maybe they play around with the edges or something like that. But I really want us to focus on today in particular is identifying some of the challenges or hurdles in our community and start figuring out what type of solutions we want to look at. And then hopefully I can provide you guys with more research, or you guys can help provide research too from other states or from Montana or from anywhere. And really at the end of this have a kind of, I would say, a buffet of options or ideas that we can give to the legislature. So whether that be really big things like completely recalibrating how we have the school budget formula, or smaller things, whether that be a specific grant program to incentivize, an after school program, or, a way we can give more flexibility in certain funding or mechanisms that give schools the ability to like respond to emergencies that pop up or creative ideas they have. That was one of the reasons why I talked about ESSER funding in the first really big meeting, is because one of the things with ESSER funding is that it was a big pot of money during an emergency situation, but had very, very little strings attached. A lot of times when grant money comes in federally or even at the state level to the communities, there's lots of reporting requirements. There's lots of like boxes you have to check. ESSER didn't have as much of that. ESSER was really like, be creative. This is a situation that people haven't been in before. So use this money how you think it's going to benefit the students in your community the most. So that was one of the reasons why I talked about ESSER, was because of the flexibility and the possible creative ideas that could have came out of it. But I am going to stop talking. And what I really want to hear from you guys today, like I said, is specific issues, specific hurdles, specific challenges that you see in your community, and ways that you may want to try to fix them. Or is there certain information you need, or more information you need for a creative way to fix that? So I would love for someone to just kick it off and take the lead a little bit and just talk a little bit about some of the issues that they're seeing in their community.
I will start, if that's okay, Katie.
Perfect. Yeah.
I think that across the state, and this is certainly borne out in some of the discussions that have happened in the big group, I think school districts in general are underfunded. I am had an education in the school funding formula, and I swear it looks like something you would see in a physics classroom if you put it up on the board with a particular school and class size, the school size and community size. By the time you get to the answer of how much school funding you get, it's really, really difficult for people to wrap their head around it. I think that's one of the big issues. And the other big issue is the schools are just underfunded. And we had a lot of, as you say, ESSER money that helped us be able to maintain classrooms during the pandemic, but it was expensive. And that money was cut off, or is cut off, at the end of this fiscal year. And the problem with that is the kids that struggled during the pandemic, whose mothers had to go to work and the kids were at home, and that there's a big cohort of those kids that were at home basically teaching themselves along with an online teacher. Those kids are still falling behind, and we don't have the money for the staff or the extra help to get those kids caught up. And I can't think of a better investment. We cannot let those kids continue to struggle and fall behind. It will burden us for decades in the state of Montana if we do. That's my feeling.
And that's, I think a feeling that a lot of people have. And I think what we want to start to try to dig into is where we see the weaknesses are. But also, if your just general thing is we need more money. And this is something we started talking about in the other small groups of where the school funding money comes from. And if we want more money to go into schools, where do we want that money to come from? So I'm not endorsing anything at all. I just throw ideas out there. Raising taxes in some way. I'm not saying property taxes because we're all pissed off about that, but I mean, it could be just like, do we want to raise taxes on certain things? Do we want to cut spending in other areas? Where do we get the money from? Because that's one thing legislators always like to hear, because everyone comes to them asking, we want more funding for this program, whether it be education or anything else. Where I think we get to be creative in a bigger piece of solving that problem is if we can suggest other sources of revenue, either showing that it can either be a creative source of revenue, or it can be like, this is where the community feels. The community thinks we can get more money from this, from raising taxes on this, or we feel like we can take money from this program that's not working and put it into education. So when we're talking about how we want more funding, let's think about what the legislators will want to see, and they'll want to see or want to hear from the community of where that money should come from. And I know Sheila kind of talked broadly too, and I think that's great. We don't need to stay on topic in this group, but I know a lot of people in here were interested in specific programs. So I don't know if anyone wants to talk about either big picture or a specific program that they don't have at their school that they would like to see at their school, or a program that's not working as well as they would like it to, or a program that needs more funding, or a curriculum area that you're interested in to make sure that that is something that is covered in our schools and funded by our schools. For instance, the Indian Education for All. In Montana, each student or each school gets a portion of money to make sure that Indian education is a part of their education. So the schools get an extra chunk of money to make sure that's part of the curriculum.
I've got just a little bit of feedback if I could give it. I've just recently gotten into the OPI system, the grant making system there. And one of the things that I found is it's so convoluted and complex that at our school, our staff are working so hard to keep up and do all the basics that they need to do that many times they were passing up monies that are available. So like we just did the ESSER grant for the after school program for the summer program. And it was something that I had approached at the beginning of the year, but literally the system for obtaining the grant and then just recently going through it for the first time, there was a lot of resources that I think could be better spent if we could update that system. And I think that the monies might get out to the schools better and people may be more interested and willing to go for those grants. I don't know if I said that well.
No,
No.
that totally
But-
makes sense. So, we have been transitioning some of the, technology, basically reporting technology. So that has started to occur. And yesterday I was actually talking to a clerk. I think Christina was on it, and she talked about how she sees how it's getting better, that there's some growing pains right now, but the whole like technology modernization is happening. It just
Yeah.
is, it's a process. And unfortunately, a lot of the grant stuff, especially when it comes from the feds, they make it difficult.
Yes,
And I
yeah.
understand because you want accountability. People want to make sure that their tax dollars are being spent in ways that'll actually help students and not just, whatever.
Well-
But it is difficult, and that is great feedback and something that is a smaller thing to tackle, but that could really assist schools.
I think it really will because, kind of being that I had just had to learn the system, I was super grateful for all of the support I got from OPI. I mean, I had so much support, but there were so many steps along the way that even just finding which page I was supposed to be on, I had to make phone calls and then I'm utilizing OPI resources that could be doing other better things than giving me tech support and just where to find things in the e-grant system. So that was
I bet
something
you were talking to Wendy, right?
I did talk to Wendy a little
Okay.
bit, but I also was talking to oh my gosh, I put that in a compartment and I put it aside already. Was it Rebecca that I was working with or Rachel?
Rebecca, yeah. But we had a
Yeah,
lot of,
so
I was like, there's a
everybody
lot of
was everybody was so wonderful along the way, but I mean, it was little things like just technical things from that e-grant system where it wasn't obvious where you input the budget information. I had to find that by hitting another tab and then another year and those kinds of things. And so those are the kinds of things that I think resource wise would be hopefully fairly in the big picture would not be financially cumbersome, at the end of the day. But
Yeah.
if we could streamline that process, I think that a lot more of the federal funding would be utilized. And yes, the reporting requirements are always something that everybody's reticent about. But when there are, like, I started just as a community member willing to say, hey, I've worked in school systems and I've volunteered for so many years. I know there's funds here. How can I help? So I think there's other people in the community that are willing to do some of that as well if they could navigate the systems. So that was one of the areas that I really wanted to just share, but also share the praises of everybody I've interacted with so far at OPI has been extremely helpful and very willing to help us get the funds because they really want us to have the funds at the school.
I kind of want to echo what Amber said. And I know these sort of situations are just probably difficult for you, Catherine, as the OPI representative, to know that you guys are all working as hard as you can, given a lot of constraints, but to not take this as just like us all attacking you. So I admire that you are able to sit here and just hear all this sort of information. But I do kind of want to echo that same comment that Amber made, and that is more specifically with the ESSER funds that were available to after school programs. After school programs need this funding super badly. And yet the first year people tried to apply for these grants and found that the process so difficult and cumbersome that with the amount of staff that they have, they weren't able to do it. And I'm still getting comments from programs who got a grant 2 years ago under ESSER and who are still getting reporting requirements. And so it feels like almost all of the programs, even though they really want the money and need the money, are finding it so much more difficult to deal with e-grants and the processes that they can't. And so that's a really huge problem to have this huge, great pot of money that can be used for great stuff not being used. And so I would try to see in whatever ways that those, pieces can be simplified for programs, that would be huge. The other thing is, we work kind of closely with other state versions of what we do, but there are other, state education agencies that have had to roll out these funds as well. And so kind of trying to collaborate with some of them to see how they maybe are doing it, and still making sure that the feds are getting what they need, but making it a little bit easier so that we're not trying to invent it on our own in Montana. But I would say that's been a comment I have heard over and over and over from programs around the state.
Yeah, no, and we don't take that personally because we know it's, you know, so there's grants that you guys apply for, but we also apply for grants from the federal government. And like, we have to hire people who have been trained in grant writing because it is such a complicated process. So it is partially trickled down, but like I said, the technology updates is something that we have been focusing a lot. It is slow, but I think that's honestly great feedback. And it's very, this is what I'm talking about, buffet of ideas. That's a really like approachable idea and won't cost a lot of money, but can be really helpful. And so I think that's perfect. That's what we're looking for. Those ideas that we can like chomp off in little bits, and then some things that may be bigger picture that take years to whatever to get it passed or implement. But no, I love that. And I think I totally get where you guys are coming from. We get that. And hopefully that's something that we can continue to work on and update and make just all the technology stuff easier. There's a lot of information that comes in, so sometimes it's not as easy as it sounds, but it's something we are trying to do across the board for all data reporting.
Katie, also, is it possible in the short term to reach out and try to create a directory of people who've had some experience writing the grants, so that, especially in the case of smaller nonprofits or smaller school districts that don't have in-house capability, they could reach out to someone?
That is a great idea. I mean, to be perfectly honest, we even struggle finding people who have grant writing experience for us to hire and actually pay money to do it. So there is just a shortage of people who are very knowledgeable in that. But I actually think that's a great idea because there are different levels of grant writing, right? Or grant applying. So there is more of a specialty for people who have to do it to the feds, where it's like an 80-page document and you have to do like a whole like 70 pages of writing how the whole program is going to work. And I'm summarizing it. But I think that would be a great idea to see if I'll talk to some people here who, especially Wendy, who's been helping a lot of people, and she oversees the ESSER program, and she's been helping, and her team's been helping a lot of people with the ESSER grant stuff. So let me talk to Wendy about that actually, because that's something that won't cost any money and something that we can just do here in house, and I don't have to get permission from the legislature. So at the end of the day, OPI, we're tasked with implementing a lot of what the legislature passes. So sometimes we have to wait for them to update things because we can't statutorily. But that is something that we can do, and I think basically for free. So let me talk to Wendy to see if there's like other people we think that maybe we could put a repository together of just like, hey, these are people that have helped other schools, and maybe will volunteer some of their time. And I apologize, I'm looking down because I'm taking notes while we talk too. And this meeting's also being recorded, so I can go back and refer to it. And kind of at the end of this, I'm going to do like a little one-pager for us to then revisit. So as we're addressing, identifying issues, then as the meetings go on, we focus more on refining how we see solving those issues.
So one thing that they do in the private school, you had mentioned like volunteers. So one thing that they do in the private school, and I don't know how translatable this would be to public school, but they have what they call PIP points, PIP. And as a parent of a kid who goes to the private school, you are required, well, not required, you have to basically volunteer 24 PIP points. 1 point is equal to an hour. And for every point you don't fulfill by the end of the year, they tally it up $25 a point. So it's an incentive for the parents to participate, and whether that's volunteering, doing sports coaching, or if it's cleaning up after events. In my case, I help the teachers when they're short-staffed with field trips, and they also do a big auction every single year, and I help collect food and things like that. So again, I don't know how translatable this is to public school, but I very much for parent involvement in the schools. And I feel like if there's any way that it could alleviate some of the short staffedness or stresses or areas where they might be lacking in expertise and skills. So, I mean, if you have parents and one's a lawyer and one's a mathematician at a college, if there's any way to kind of harvest from those groups of people who have expertise in different areas that they could help children tutoring after school. I understand that we're all busy and everybody works and everybody, life is chaotic. But I mean, if you ask parents to fulfill, they have a whole entire year to fulfill 24 hours worth of volunteer services. If you have a collection of 1,000 students and that number of parents to equal that, is that something that's doable in the public system?
Well, can I? Yeah. Currently, I'm in the public school, so I can see that in my school they're doing the coaching. Some parents help in the school, so like in reading to like follow up the students in school when they need help, something like that. They schedule the time like Tuesday, Thursday, so that they can help other kids who needs help. I think that really helps the children.
Yeah, so I think as long as there may be, and depending on what type of role they're taking, a background check possibly needed, but it would be up
Yeah.
to so Montana, and I've mentioned this in other groups, but I've lived in a couple different states. So I have experience from different states. In Montana is a very, very local control, more so than other states. The school boards and the school trustees have a lot more say in their schools and exactly how things are implemented, how the budget's set up and everything than a lot of other states.
Yeah.
And that's great. But then sometimes there's challenges too. But it does allow for more flexibility. So it really is up to the individual school districts and how they want to allow that. So there's no like
Yeah.
laws prohibiting it. I think unless, like I said, and depending on the role, just making sure the person has like a background check to make sure they're like,
We do
normal.
have to do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
to attend training, and we also have to do a background check and provide a copy of our driver's license.
There's even certain circumstances, there's like emergency approvals for teachers. So even if they're not like a fully like trained teacher, but they may have an expertise in like a certain area where they're actually in certain circumstances, if the school requests it, OPI approves of it, of emergency authorization. Because obviously we've talked about also in other groups, the teacher retention or teacher recruitment issue. So there are some schools that have a hard time finding a teacher who's fully qualified, but they may have someone in their community that was, a computer expert or electrical engineer or something that may be able to teach a computer course or something like that. So things like that, there are emergency authorizations for.
It's
The other
there.
states have programs like that too. Montana's a relatively smaller program. There's states like Texas, Mississippi, South Carolina that have much broader programs like that, that allow people who have like, for instance, like you're a chef, right? So if they wanted to, they could bring in a home ec teacher or something like that that has experience like you. You're not a trained teacher, but they could bring you in to teach home ec courses or something like that. Based on your experience.
Then that's what I was gonna, just add to what you were saying. I apologize. Is that so with the private schools, my understanding is you don't have to have any kind of like teacher certifications, although the
Right.
teachers there do. My understanding is that they don't. I'm not sure if that comes from for public schools. Again, I don't know a ton about public schools. I know a lot more about private schools, but the if it's federally regulated, why can't I say that word? Or if there's any way to like, I don't know, expand on that or cushion that to where it's not necessarily they have to have a doctorate degree to teach physics at a high school level. Is there any cushion there to where they can have like some leniency like the private schools do?
So there is currently in law an emergency authorization that is allowed. There are other states, like I said, that have a broader program. Texas, for instance, if you do certain things, the whole school district can qualify for basically allowing the school district to go ahead and hire people who meet very kind of, I wouldn't say they're not minimum standards, because they could be people who have a PhD in math. Maybe they retired early, but they want to go back and give back to their community by teaching, or their grandkids go to the school or something like that, right? So some of these people are crazy qualified. They just don't have they're not a certified teacher. So Montana does have an emergency authorization. I think we have 200. I'm gonna have to double check. But I think we have 200 emergency authorizations currently in Montana. But we could, other states have expanded programs. So Montana could expand that program in different ways. So they could say, if a school has a certain percentage of openings, or the opening has been open for a certain amount of time and they can't fill it, then they would qualify for looking outside the certified teacher realm. Or you could also do other stipulations, like if you're hiring a math teacher, someone who's worked in the math field for 10 years, or if you're hiring an art teacher or a music teacher, it's this person's been a concert pianist for 15 years. They obviously have other qualifications that make them a good option to be hired in that role.
Said it better than I was saying it, but that's exactly what I was getting at. If there was a way to just dial it back, and if it's under the state level, then maybe that's something that could help, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who would love to teach, but they don't have the certificate. But again, like you said, with me being a chef, I taught at a university for 3 years. So I have all the skills and qualifications to do something like that. I just don't have a teaching certificate, and I have no intention of getting one. So if that opportunity were to present itself and I didn't have to have a certificate, I would gladly work at a high school or work at a middle school or wherever that the case may be. But I wouldn't even be looked at because I'm not certified. But then what if there's this absence, this gap of people who are qualified applying for those positions, or that don't bother because they're missing that one little tiny criteria?
No, that's definitely, and there's an array of options you can go down that path. And I can put that for instance, I'll put the Texas example in our spreadsheet so that anyone could look at that. Because there are certain things that district has to check before they're allowed to do it. Because anything like that, and I understand the pros and cons, so this is not me saying it in a negative or positive way, but teachers unions will be wholly opposed to that, and we'll fight that tooth and nail. So it is, doing something like that is an uphill battle. It is hard. So there has to be, sometimes you need to make certain compromises or certain restraints on it, so they're not as vehemently opposed. So saying, like you said, if a district has what I'm picking random number, 15% open rate for positions, or they're at starting to get up there where they have a lot of open positions, they've been open for a certain amount of time, and then this person that they're looking to hire has certain other qualifications. So there's lots of ways to do that, but you have to kind of thread that needle, because just saying, oh, school district, you're allowed to hire whoever you want, obviously with background checks, fingerprinting, the necessary safety stuff, but without the teacher certifications, teachers unions will be opposed to that. So you have to sometimes find a way to thread that needle, so that if a district is in a dire situation, or they've done their best to try to hire someone who does have a teaching certificate, they just can't get anyone in that circumstance, then it may make sense to allow them to hire someone that is not technically a certified teacher. Well, what else? I know we talked a lot about that, so I would love to hear some other challenges that you guys are seeing, big or small. And I see Derek jumped on here. Derek, we did introductions before, so I don't know if you would like to say hi real quick.
My name is Marion Dial.
Oh, sorry, Marion.
That's my grandson. And I'm sorry it took me so long, but I'm challenged in computers. So, have you discussed curriculum at all?
Someone has an angry pupster. We've started talking about some curriculum things, but this is kind of like an open forum right now for people to raise some issues that they've seen. So some of the things we talked about were a little like, I guess, like off to the side a little bit, but still really important. So like grant writing simplification or grant application simplification. And then we kind of started talking about the teacher certification, but we started talking a little bit about curriculum, but is there a certain area of the curriculum that you're interested in or concerned about?
Big time. I have looked at the history of the schools and the programs that at the federal level that have come about over the years. Cooperative learning, No Child Left Behind. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. And then the current one. And what I have seen is that there is no developmental integrated curriculum in our schools. So if a child starts to school in kindergarten, and as they progress through the grades, if you don't have a curriculum that is coordinated between each of those grades, then a child could go from grade to grade and miss a lot of important concepts because publishers that are out there that have curriculums that we choose from, they introduce different things at different times. So if you have a developmental integrated program with one particular publisher, the child is going to go from each grade with the same concepts being introduced and built upon. And what I visited in a school district close to me, and at a kindergarten level, the teacher I spoke with was using a set of materials. And then in the first and second and third, they do something totally different. They don't use the same curriculum at each grade level. And I think that a lot of our children are not learning to read because of that.
Oh, so is something you would advocate for a like a statewide one set curriculum for everybody? Is that
It could be, but it could also like in this state, each board of each district determines what the children are learning, correct?
Yeah. There's some like approved textbook type of things, but overall, yes, the school board gets to
Right.
a lot of control.
And the school boards rely on the superintendent to help them determine what the curriculum is going to be. Correct?
We do provide like some guidance and some recommendations and things like that, yes.
From OPI?
Yeah, like so for Indian Education for All, since I mentioned that before, we do provide like examples of curriculum and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. But school board members give up a lot of their time to help, but their background isn't in education. So they rely on the superintendent to guide them in what's going to be taught at their schools, correct?
That and also the Public Board of Education, right? So they have a large role as well.
State board?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And are the people that are on the State Board of Education, do they have a background in education? Have they taught before? Have they been in classrooms?
Some of them I know for sure. I don't know the background of every single of them, but one of them, for instance, is a superintendent and she's been teaching and stuff like that. So yes, some I know at least two of them are current superintendents.
Because if you do not have, say for instance, a reading program, and it starts at kindergarten and then it goes through each grade, say till 6th grade, if it comes from the same publisher, because different publishers introduce different concepts at different times. Okay, so then you would have a developmental integrated program from kindergarten through 6th grade. And what I see is small numbers in classrooms, like 1st grade might have 18 children. I'm just throwing this out. Maybe 2nd grade might have 16 and so on. Why is it that when you look at the state issued report card, that over 50% of the students are failing? They have not mastered the concepts at each grade level, yet they are continually promoted.
So you're saying why haven't schools changed what they're doing? Because well, some of it, I do have to break down the statistics. So it says like 50% of people aren't at, everything's like on technically a bell curve. So you do expect like there's always going to be chunks of people who are like below the average, but I won't go down the statistic road. But I mean, Montana is a local control state. So the local school boards get to decide, but overall, like reading, math scores, everything, it's not just Montana, it's a nationwide thing. It's all going down, and COVID took an extra hit to them. But what you're talking about of like, why is there not only one textbook available in Montana for all the schools? Montanans like choice. They do, and the local people want to have a say. They want to be able to elect people to their school board, have those people be responsive to what they want in their schools. So that's why a lot of it is established how it was. I'm not sure if you were on here when I was talking before, but I've worked in a number of other states. Montana does have substantially higher local control than some other states. I would say some of the other states where I know there is more state-centered control, their reading and math scores and everything are bad too. They're all across the board not doing well in America. So
well,
just as for reference, I guess.
Well, something needs to be done in this state so that children are getting the education that they need. I mean, I have a friend who taught high school here, and I asked her, about her experience, and she said that at the high school level, they had children that couldn't read. And here they'd been through, elementary school and so forth.
So one of the things that, and this is just like, I guess more of awareness. So one of the things that OPI is actually rolling out right now, and it's like the first in the nation type of things that we're doing here, is recalibrating how we're doing testing. And there's been a pilot program in some schools over the last couple years, but it's actually going to start going fully statewide in this next school year. And it's, instead of these big long tests that they take at the end of the year, They're smaller tests that they take throughout the year, so you can actually get real-time results back in, because half the time when they, not half the time, all the time when they take this big long test at the end of the year, they don't get the results until like the next year. So they can't actually adjust what they're doing or how those students actually need help in real time. What these smaller tests will be doing is they'll get results back right away, and they'll be able to actually adjust things to the group of students they have in that classroom at that moment. So this is kind of going towards that more personalized like learning situation where the teachers can adjust in real time and also with the students they currently have, versus they see the test results. Those students aren't even in their class anymore. They're on to from 7th to 8th grade. So that is one of the things we're looking at. And I know it's not fully changing like the curriculum. That's one thing that's being implemented right now. It's really cool. We like Montana had to get a special waiver from like the feds to be able to do this. And so far in the schools have been rolled out in, like most schools are really happy with it. They see how this is going to be good in the long term. There's obviously some growing pains transferring over, but I think that's kind of getting at what you're talking about, is making sure that we're actually adjusting to what the students' needs are at that moment, and not always looking at data in the past. If we have data in real time, you can do so much more with it.
Well, an example is, there are programs out there. One I'm familiar with is Zoophonics. It's been very successful in other school districts where they're using it. And it goes from like kindergarten through 3rd grade. And the children are learning how to read. And what I don't see here is that they don't use that at, say, like kindergarten through 3rd grade. It appears like there's a different kind of material used at each different grade. So there's no continuity for the children in going from one grade to the next.
I have to say, I think that is an excellent point and not one that I was aware of. And certainly, I'd like to see two things, Katie. I'd like to see school districts report what curriculum they used for each grade. And then I'd like to see parents have some transparency. I'd like school districts to report, we used this curriculum for the last 3 years, and these were our results.
Good ideas.
Tell people what you're using and when, and then tell people what your results were from that. But understanding there's a lot of different reasons that kids are struggling right now, and the pandemic has a lot to do with it. But I think those are excellent points that you raised. I think it's not just a statewide solution that she's asking for, Katie. I think she's saying that each school district should be more transparent in reporting whether or not they picked a curriculum that builds on each successive year or not. I wasn't aware that was an issue, and I definitely will talk to some teachers about that and ask them about their experience.
No, I think that's a good way to approach it, and probably more approachable for the legislators to say, like, let's have some more, I guess, information on what curriculums are being used. And then obviously parental transparency is good. It would be hard to, I think, to get most Montanans on board with having the exact same curriculum in every school in the same way, just being realistic. Because Montana does value so much having that local control. But having more, I think, transparency is probably a better way to start seeing what you're looking for, and more approachable for Montanans or the Montanan legislature too.
And Katie, just to kind of pitch in there on that one, it's such good points. And having been in different schools and in different states and in different districts, I think that everybody being on this forum is awesome. but it all goes back to local control on things like this, like you said. And so if these are concerns in your area or your school district, show up at school board meetings. I've told people that a million times, because you do get heard when you show up at school board meetings, but you have to show up. And they want, most boards, transparent boards, really want parent involvement, and they want parents to bring these things to them, because they don't know if we're not showing up and asking the questions.
Yep, no, that's a great point, because of the local control, you can make a really big difference just by going to a school board meeting. I was about to ask you guys another question, because it's something that popped up and it just left my brain. We are running a little bit out of time, so I want to make sure that everyone gets to at least throw some of the issues or hurdles that they're seeing out there. And what I want to do is be able to provide you guys with some more information between now and next month. So next month we can really talk about like specific proposals and start flushing that out of things. And we don't all have to agree either. There could be like a whole buffet of options. Be like, some people really like this, other people really like this option. So I want to make sure that everyone kind of gets to start talking about some of the issues they see in their district. So any other things that you guys would specifically like to highlight, or would you like more information?
In terms of creative budgeting ideas, technically people can donate to school districts. It doesn't happen often. It's probably not widely known, but that might be an avenue for schools to access additional funding, or for people who maybe, like, say someone is a big supporter of the arts and they want to make a contribution to the arts program at their local school, that would be a way that people can direct some of their funds to a specific part of the school program offerings that I think people may not be aware that they can do. So that may be an avenue for raising awareness among people in Montana, that's an option for school districts to be able to maybe publicize that better, that's a possibility. And then people who have something specific that they want to support, it gives them an avenue to support that more directly as an idea.
I think that's a great idea. And to be perfectly honest, I'm just saying this, I'm not sure. I'm not super knowledgeable about tax policy necessarily in Montana. Is there, do you guys, and I'll check, what's the write-off for donations for state taxes?
Schools are considered a nonprofit, and so it depending on what it's going to or the entity donating, but in most cases it could be considered a tax write-off. Yes.
Okay. I was thinking so, but I was also thinking, I was like, I wonder if there's ways that we could advocate for, and I know this doesn't solve everything, but like little things here or there, who knows how it can help a school district, especially a small one, how we can like incentivize donations, right? So maybe by increasing that tax write-off, or something along those lines, or having it, so I mean, I guess if someone's retired and they're donating, they don't get as much quite bang for their buck depending on for the tax write-off. So maybe there's ways we can expand upon that in a way that it would create a bigger incentive to donate to your local school.
That's a yes. Yeah. I mean, we have like boosters for the sports teams.
Sure.
Why not expand that so that people who want to help support the special education program or anything else can do the same and get something for it in return.
Katie,
sorry, go ahead.
The governor introduced a bill which was passed, and then it was expanded. And then there was a lawsuit to expand it to not public schools, for private schools. And I believe that the last time they opened it up, I think that the limit was like $5 million.
I'm looking at it right now. I was Googling it. It's
Yeah.
House Bill 408 from the 2023
Yeah.
legislature. Yeah.
And the problem was that people who donate to their favorite private school filled that thing up in about 15 minutes. Because they could get a tax credit for something that they normally would have to, it could be there's a difference between a tax credit and a tax, what's the other one?
Deduction.
A tax deduction. A tax deduction, you can only take off your tax bill, but a tax credit, you can actually get money back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another
So-
another concern that we've seen kind of with that sort of model is that it favors towns that have a lot of money. And so the
Right.
towns like Big Fork and Polson with the lake and Missoula and Bozeman, they get a ton of money to their schools through those models, but then the little towns that don't have big donors aren't getting anything. And so the gap between schools continues to be like a challenge around the state. And so that's one thing we do want to look at if we are looking at models like that.
Exactly.
Sure. Sorry, I was just throwing ideas out there that popped in my head, and I was like, I actually don't know the rules around it. And as you were like telling me about it, I found a document, which I'll throw in the shared drive. So if anyone was curious about like what this bill actually did, I'll throw this document. It looks like a pretty good overview of it. So if you're curious like me, and I'm a little not as experienced in tax policy, but just think about the creative ways we can think about things. It doesn't hurt to talk about these things. And I just learned something too, right? So it's good to flush that stuff out. So we're about an hour in. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I have some good notes that we talked about, some of the smaller things. I think we didn't get that far in the weeds today. So one of the things I guess I have an ask of you is what information would you like? I'm actually going to look a little bit more into the current reporting about what the curriculum is in certain schools, because I know that there is something around that, but I'm not the curriculum person here. So I'm just going to look up a little bit more about how we track the curriculums in the different school districts. It sounds like we had some interest in that. But what other things would you guys like to know a little bit more about? What other areas would we like to dig in and think about for next time to really start trying to formulate some ideas of where, of the suggestions that we'll pass on?
I'd like to talk more about Indian education for all.
Okay, and I have a bunch of resources in there right now because there was a change to that bill in the last session that actually put teeth on it. So schools can actually lose money if they don't use that money for actual Indian education. Because previously they basically just got the money and they had to be like, yeah, we're doing it. Now they actually have to say, yeah, we're doing it. This is how we're doing it. And if they don't do it, they don't get to keep the money for the next year.
I would like to have you definitely follow up and find out what is the curriculum that's being used in kindergarten through third grade. And how many students are in the classes from kindergarten through third grade?
Do you want the median or the average?
I guess you could say
I'll
the
see what we
average.
got. We'll have numbers broken down in different ways.
Okay, all right. Because it appears to me that when you have a class of, say, 18 children in first grade, I mean, that is a teacher's dream. Those children should all be able to learn their basic skills. If you have a class of 35, it's more difficult. And frankly, the pandemic didn't cause a lot of the problems that I have seen here, they were there before.
I think COVID just shined a light on some stuff that had been happening.
Yes. Okay.
For sure. I think there's definitely been more parent engagement since COVID, so that's one good thing. I feel like parents are a little like tuned in, so I'll try to look at the silver lining of that one. And then
Thank you.
Tamara, I know you were very interested in like the gifted and talented programs, and I threw some
Mhm.
information on that into the share drive of kind of the funding mechanisms for that. I also, like I mentioned, I threw some things in there for career and technical education. So that does kind of fall under curriculum, and I think it's something we should talk about because it's a big issue across the US. In general, Congress has been passing bills about it. Montana has been passing bills about it. When I talk to the legislators, it's all on the top of their mind. They're all talking about career readiness, having people that are ready to enter the workforce when they're coming out of school, making sure that like high school students know that there's other options besides the traditional four-year school. If that's not an option for you, how do you start preparing now while you're in high school for a career right off the bat? So career and technical education has been a hot topic for the last couple of years, and that's, I know, something that the legislature continues to talk about in just preparing our workforce going forward. So I think that's something that we should keep in our mind too, because it is a big piece. And then Rachel, I know you wanted to talk more about after school programs, which we didn't really talk too much today about, but is there anything that you would like to know more about that I could pull data on for anything for the after school programs? Although you're probably more of an expert than any data that I could pull for you. But what are the types of things that you're looking at talking about for that going forward?
You know, it would be interesting to know, and OPI might have access to this better than we do, but of just what programs are working with their schools versus, you know, so I guess the question would be more like which schools are working with their after school programs, and how, so that we can kind of get that information out to other communities to try to give those ideas to them. Sometimes the best way to learn is from what your neighbor's doing. And but also, I mean, I think we do need to keep talking about the funding streams and what else could be cut. So or what we could do to convince the legislature to prioritize our education system more and these after school programs, because they're really, like you said, key to like future careers and job readiness. And we as a state want our kids to be able to stay in Montana and make Montana a better place. And so we've got to think about supporting them now, and we need to be making those arguments to the legislature. But it also, I mean, it also touches on things like, you know, safety and community safety and crime prevention. Those are all things that if we are supporting our education and these programs and safe places for kids to go after school, then we can make a big difference in some of our other areas. But it seems to be that when they're considering what they're funding, they just look at the bottom line and what costs a lot of money. They don't necessarily see these longer term goals that they actually do probably support. So we need to figure out ways to convince them of that. I don't know what data you can pull to do that, but
well, sometimes it's from other states too. So I put a couple comparison for states, but it's very broad overviews. But I know when we're talking to legislators or we're trying to convince legislators of whatever your opinion is, and I'm trying to be a neutral party because I have ideas sometimes of how I would like things solved, but I'm trying to be neutral and just be a conduit of you guys' information. And what I'm here to try to do is to bring in what I think the legislature is going to be looking for and the best way for you guys and for us to communicate what your priorities are to them. So that's what I'm hoping to be there for. And I think like when we can look for data for this, and I'm just not sure, I'm sure there's numbers that show this, but how like, okay, you invested $10 million in this after school program, but it increased attendance rates at the school. It like decreased like incidents where, you know, a security had to be involved or police or something had to be called. Hopefully we're not calling police that much to schools, but you know what I'm saying. So there's numbers where we can look at, it's like, yes, it increased $5 million here, but we actually had a decrease in spending on these certain areas. And it's the same thing when we're looking at teacher retention. It might cost more money to pay teachers a little bit higher right now, but it also costs a lot of money to hire new teachers, to train those new teachers, the time and energy spent to even just interview those teachers. That's also a cost. And we're not thinking about the replacement of teachers and that cost versus maybe paying them a little bit more. You keep them around more, you actually end up saving money, but that's a hard number to calculate. But it's something that, like, I think it's important to do that comparison. Like, every time we don't do something, there is a cost. So if we're looking at building maintenance funds, right? Like, maintenance might get put off. Well, it's like when it's an oil change in your car. If you don't change your oil and then your car like fully breaks down and you have to buy a new car, that's a lot more expensive than if you just did that a couple times a year oil change. So we have to look at those things and present it, I think, that way to the legislature. So I think the after school kind of program things fall into that too. So yes, they cost this much money, but you'll save money in these 5 other ways.
I think it would be interesting to, I don't know how much time this would take, but to have an examination of what are the things that are mandated in our law and accreditation standards and how much funding is going to them, which ones are fully funded, which ones are partially funded, which ones are underfunded, which ones are not funded. I mean, if we've got requirements to do these things, why are we not putting our money where our mouth is and supporting those things to be done? So, I mean, I'm sure gifted education, unfortunately, is probably not the only thing that's a requirement, but underfunded, and therefore maybe there's other things that are in the same boat that are not happening, or maybe we need to look at like what percentage of funding for all of these mandates is the state willing to give, and what portion would they expect to fall to the local district. Right now in the world of gifted education, the proportion that falls to the local district is gigantic compared to the amount that the state provides. And therefore, that's why it's not happening in most districts.
Yeah, I mean, this relates, I mean, the parallels are kind of, we could see some parallels with special education, right? There is some more special education funding that comes from the feds than the gifted and talented program necessarily, but the IDEA program, like technically the feds can pay up to 40% for a special ed student. Generally, it's been in the teens. I think the highest ever reached was 20%. It might have been in like 99 or something like that. So there's a number of ways we could look at that. But I think there's ways we can compare that. It's different, but we can compare it to how special education is. It's a required thing. Is it always funded where we think it should be? Not necessarily. Same thing, I think, with the gifted and talented types of programs where it's supposed to be there, but it's not funded to its full potential. Okay, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time because you guys all took personal time out to spend time with me, which I'm sure you guys have much better things to do than listen to me talk. But I really appreciate it. Like I said, this is the first time we're doing something like this, so I appreciate everyone's just patience with me as we're just figuring this out. But I do think at the very least some creative ideas are going to come out of this. And the one thing I've learned throughout my travels and journeys is that putting the really good ideas out there, start talking about them, maybe they don't happen right at once, but that gets the momentum rolling. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. So we'll just keep talking about all these issues, how we can solve them. If you keep beating that drum, then the snowball gets bigger and people pay attention. So I think this is great. I appreciate everyone's time. Please shoot me an email if you have any questions about anything, or if you want me to pull some more research. I already have some homework to do. I'll shoot around an email probably sometime next week with a review of this meeting, some more resources, and I'll keep sporadically updating the share folder. Please, if you see anything out there, throw it in the share folder. I'm sure I don't stumble across everything. So, but other than that, everyone have a really great night, and just stay in touch if there's anything you need from me.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so
Nice
much.
to meet all of you. Have a good night.